Good afternoon everybody, Joe Martin Miller here, hope you are going well. I'm just sitting down on my laptop on my day off and I'm watching this video from Barbie from Geography Now, or Paul, that's his actual name. And the title is, what were my first countries on each continent? Where he's talking about, okay, how he was born in the United States of America, but then he went to Korea as a child, and then his first country in Africa was Tanzania, and then his first country in South America was Bolivia. And it got me thinking about that I've been on 6 out of 7 continents. And what was my first port of entry in each of these continents? Now, let's begin. Okay, I was born in Sydney, Australia 40 years ago. Australia is basically considered a continent, but then the thing is, all those Pacific islands, they tend to be clumped within Australia, like Australasia or Oceania. So for reference, basically, yes, I was born in Sydney, Australia, in the continent of Australia, but then I went to New Zealand many times as a child and as an adult, but I wasn't leaving my own continent. I did not leave my own continent of Australia until I was 24 years old in 2010. And that is when I made my first port of call to a foreign continent, when I traveled on a flight from Brisbane to Los Angeles. Los Angeles was my first point of ever entering North America in whole. Now, North America can be considered, US, Canada, Mexico, as well as Central America and the Caribbean. That's all clumped together as once. So I was in the United States and Canada for a period of 6 weeks. I went to Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, Phoenix, Arizona. I had a layover in Minnesota. I went to Montreal and I went to Toronto, and that was a period of 6 weeks. And then I didn't go back to North America for 8 whole years. So I had already planned in my life that I was going to go to Los Angeles, and then Los Angeles would have to be my first port of call in North America. I didn't have much of an interest in going to Latin America, but that would happen later in life. Now, the third continent that I went to was in Asia, and I was flying from Sydney to London 40 years after my father left the United Kingdom, and I made a stopover in Shanghai. Well, it was just basically to change planes, but then I had 13 hours in Beijing. So People's Republic of China, Beijing was the first port that I ever went to in the big continent of Asia itself. I spent 13 hours in Beijing. I got to see Tiananmen Square before running to get back on a flight to go to Europe. I had been to Asia many times in my life, but there's still many parts of Asia that I've yet to been to. So this brings me to my fourth continent, was Europe. And there was a no-brainer. My first country I ever had to go to in Europe was definitely the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, aka England, or basically London itself. I flew into London Heathrow Airport in June 2011 on a flight from Beijing, and I was in Europe for about 2-ish weeks. And so I would dream and aspire that I would move from Australia to Europe. And so Europe was a continent which took me over 8 years to visit each one of its different countries. And I remember I took a couple of trips over to Europe within a 2-year period, but then I decided to move here properly in 2015. And then I moved permanently back to Europe in December 2016. And the longest time I've been away from Europe in that time frame was when I spent a whole month in Africa. So which brings me to my fifth continent. My first ever entry into the continent of Africa was in Tangier, Morocco, also in June 2011. Now, you may think, well, why would you choose a port like Tangier as your first ever entry into Africa? Let's be simple. I was in Europe for 2 weeks to see the Scorpions at Hellfest, and I really wanted to cram in as many countries as I can. But I thought, okay, if I really want to get to Gibraltar and I want to get to Spain, I definitely want to get to Morocco. So I went to Tangier for the day, and it was really awful. It was a shit show. I was hounded and hassled a lot by scams and touts. I swore a lot. I really I was really like aggressive and angry at people annoying me. And this was basically the first time I ever went to Africa. This was, a lot of people would basically say, oh, Morocco is really that Africa. I'm like, no, 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 no. Morocco is Africa. It doesn't matter if you basically just go to Morocco, Egypt, you're still going to Africa. But it would take me 10 years to go back to Africa. And as a matter of fact, I actually went back to Tangier 12 years later. Man, I had a good time. Hassle-free, no bullshit whatsoever. And it's a funny thing how that I've actually now been to 26 African nations in a period of under 5 years. And I'm still going for more, even though like I don't really have much desire like right now to go back to Africa, as I've already been to Sao Tome and Angola this year. But it's been like a continent that I think I've spent more time in Africa, I believe, than in Asia itself. And I've always, in the last few years, I've always made an effort to go to at least one new African country in like the last few years. I'm quite happy how I went to Angola and Sao Tome this year, but then 2 years ago, I basically went to 9 different countries in Africa in like a few different trips. And also including revisits to Senegal, the Gambia, and Morocco. Now, the 6th continent and the last inhabitable continent that I went to was South America, and this took me until I was 33 years old. It was November 2019. I was planning to go to Africa for 2 weeks, but then I thought, fuck it, I haven't been to South America. There was a good flight from Paris to a French territory of French Guiana, Cayenne. So Cayenne became my first port of call in South America. It's where I first landed. I've got what I consider was a domestic flight. So I was pretty much just flying from Hexagon, Paris, well, France, to its French territory in South America that they still control. Where they use euros, they drive on the right-hand side of the road, and the number plate's in French, and you'll see people speak French. Yes, that I didn't have plans to go to other countries in South America first. I thought, it's too expensive to fly to Guyana from Britain, and it's too expensive to fly to Suriname from Holland. Sorry, Amsterdam. So I thought, why don't you just take the domestic flight from Paris to Cayenne? So I did that. I flew to Cayenne. I spent, a short period of time in French Guiana, but I was basically just using French Guiana as a base to travel all the way into Guyana and Suriname, and then all the way back down into Brazil. I was there for 2 weeks, and I was really proud of my trip to the Guianas, and I really would like to go back to the Guianas someday soon. But unfortunately, I haven't really been to the Spanish-speaking countries of South America, although I do consider I have been to Latin America when you consider Central American nations as part of Latin America. Yes. But another few brainy points, okay? My first British overseas territory that I ever went to was Gibraltar, which was actually on my first trip to Europe. And I still haven't been to any of these, like, French territories in the Caribbean, or like, I could have gone to New Caledonia when I lived in Australia, but I thought, it's not a country, it's still part of France. I still haven't been to, those British overseas territories in the Caribbean. I still haven't been to those islands the Netherlands still controls in the Caribbean. Yes, so I'm grateful that it took me a period of under 10 years to visit 6 different continents. And as for my own continent of Australasia, I'm sad to say I've only ever been to Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. Timor-Leste is considered more of Asia, I guess. But sometimes when they ask me to tick boxes, when I highlight all the countries in the map of the world, Timor-Leste is classed under Oceania, which is a bit silly. And also, I do have regrets that I didn't go to the Pacific Island nations when I lived in Australia. That's my only bummer of living in Australia for 30 years and not getting out. But also, I didn't really see much of my own country of birth. I only went to, like, New South Wales, ACT, Queensland, Victoria, and Northern Territory. Yeah, I had to change planes Northern Territory to get a flight to East Timor-Leste. So, these are the main ports of entry in my travels. Born in Sydney, first port of entry in North America was LA, first port of entry in Asia was Beijing, first port of entry in Europe was London, first port of entry in Africa was Tangier, first port of entry in South America was Cayenne. I'm Martin the Metalhead, over and out.